Hey guys, I think you've already seen some of the videos that I've made on critical reading. What I thought was that we could similarly look at the impact of grammar on the way you do your reading comprehension. So technically, this is a very similar video compared to critical reading one, in that I have a few excerpts that I'm going to walk you through. But this time, what we'll do is we'll focus on breaking the sentences. Okay, precisely clauses and phrases which happen to be, in my humble opinion, one of the most important aspects of reading. Separates good readers from the bad readers. Good readers generally have a natural understanding towards, what is a clause and what is a phrase. Just to give you a quick idea about what is a clause and what is a phrase. Okay, I want you to see some of these definitions. So this is one part that bothers a lot of readers, okay, that they generally do not differentiate between a phrase and a clause. Both are fragments of sentences, mind you. But the major difference is a clause is a complete idea. Now, so which takes us back to what exactly is a complete idea. A complete idea basically should have a subject and a verb combination. That's a clause, okay, subject and verb. In other words, to tell you the full story. And any story will obviously have two parts, right? Who's doing it, what is that subject doing. The two parts have to be given. So clause is basically the complete idea. Phrase, on the other hand, does not give you the complete idea. So it's just the fragment that makes partial sense but does not really give you the complete idea in terms of a subject verb combination. So a group of words that make sense but don't give you subject verb combination, phrase. Group of words that make complete sense, give you a complete story, give you a subject verb combination, it's a clause. Now, how is a clause different from sentence? We'll have to go back to what we learned in school. A lot of bad stuff was taught to us in school, isn't it? Then we're generally taught to understand that sentence is the most basic unit of communication. It's actually wrong. Okay, what we got taught in school about the importance of sentence is actually not that important. Clause is important. A clause is nothing but a simple sentence, one idea. But sentences, by their very nature, can be a combination of multiple clauses and phrases. So multiple ideas can be there in a sentence, which is why, as a reader, I cannot really focus on the entire sentence. The entire set of words between two full stops. That's what is a sentence, right? Between two full stops. And people tend to read full stop to full stop, which is one habit I keep repeating time and again in this channel or wherever I've taught. It's that you do not worry about the two full stops. The full stop doesn't matter for you. You only worry about one clause, okay, at a given point. It doesn't matter how long the sentence is, then you'll become a good reader. So you don't have to bother about how long the sentence is. You only have to bother about where does the first clause stop. Okay, so a simple thumb rule that you can apply to figure out what a clause is. When you look at a group of words and you have to ask what about it, then it's a phrase basically. Okay, but when you look at a group of words and you don't have to ask the question what about it, because it's already telling you everything, then it's called a clause. Right? So try to differentiate between a phrase and a clause as much as possible when you're reading. Okay. Now, another part that you need to understand is the difference between, what is called a main clause and what is called a dependent clause. That's also equally important. Apologies. So the difference between a main clause and the independent clause is also actually important, because a main clause is something that can stand on its own. So it's a sentence. We just cut it off from a sentence and leave it, it becomes a separate sentence. That's a main clause. On the other hand, what is a dependent or a subordinate clause? It has a subject verb combination, but it cannot exist on its own as a sentence. Okay, for example, this sentence here, if you notice, if you trust the judgment of Steve, okay, if you separate out this part here, okay, this is a clause, because there is a subject and there is a verb. Yes, the subject verb combination. So it gives you some idea. You trust the judgment of Steve. But the moment you add, if it is incomplete, if you trust the judgment of Steve, what? Isn't it? So this part cannot stand on its own. On the other hand, this part is called the main clause. You will understand why Bucky was upset with Falcon. Okay? You is the subject here, will understand is the verb here, subject verb combination. But you will understand why Bucky was upset with Falcon can be a separate sentence of its own, which is why it's main clause. Okay, now this is what we call a complex sentence. At some point later, I may make a video, depending on the traction on this channel and how many people leave comments and how many of you really benefit from it. Probably I will, if you're interested. Which brings me back to that topic as well. Okay, unless there is enough traction, enough comments, or enough discussion, or enough subscribers, I'm not going to waste my personal time making these videos because I have nothing to sell technically. Okay, as much as possible. Okay, I don't want to make a YouTube empire or anything. But the point is, if it is useful and if this is something that you want to do further, then I could probably make a few more videos on grammar and stuff. It's a lot of stuff, funky stuff in grammar that makes people read better. Anyway, so for that, you'll have to maybe interact a little bit more on the channel. Don't leave stupid comments, just what you want to learn. Okay, even if there are 3 or 4 sincere people, I'm more than happy to make what they want to learn. Okay, anyway, keep that aside now. Now, if you're looking at what is happening here, the sentence is the classic if x comma y structure. Okay, if x then y. The y part is what is called the main clause. The x part is what is called the subordinate clause. Okay, this is the important part of sentence. And even in long sentences, one part of the sentence is more important than another part of the sentence, which is why you cannot look at the sentence as one entire entity. You'll have to look at clauses. Only then you can distinguish between which is the important clause and which is a not so important clause. Okay, hope that makes sense to you. So I hope you watch the series. Okay, by the way, if not, I mean, Marvel fans should have. Obviously, I mean, DC fans, we won't worry about them for now. It was a fun series, isn't it? Anyways, so this if is what you call a conjunction. So also to point out that anytime there are 2 clauses in a sentence, there'll always be one conjunction. Okay, because 2 clauses you connect using a conjunction. Conjunction is mandatory. So basically, that's a very definition of a conjunction. A conjunction connects one clause to another clause. Main clause to main clause, main clause to subordinate clause to subordinate clause, doesn't matter. But there will always be a conjunction when there are 2 clauses. Or if the number of verbs in a sentence is x, the number of conjunctions in a sentence has to be x minus 1. Okay, so that's classic math rule that you can apply in grammar. You can just see it, it's almost always true. Anyways, so as a reader, your job is to figure out what are clauses and what are phrases. So for example, if this part here, the original Captain America, this part, okay, who we are all fans of, the original Captain America does not have a subject verb combination. It's just a group of words. It makes partial sense, but doesn't give you a complete idea. When you see the original Captain America, you feel like asking, what about it? Right. So when you feel like asking what about it, that means it's a phrase. If you trust the judgment of Steve, you will not ask what about it, because you subject trust verb. You will understand why Bucky was upset with Falcon. You won't feel like asking what about it, because you will understand subject verb combination. The original Captain America, what? You feel like asking. So that part is a phrase. Okay. So as you can see, the sentence can be a combination of clauses and phrases, but you cannot read from if to Falcon in one breath. You'll have to reread the sentence multiple times. To avoid reading multiple times, what you need to do is your brain should read clusters. If you trust the judgment of Steve, one part, process it. The original Steve was the original Captain America. Second part, you will understand. Third part, why Bucky was upset with Falcon. Fourth part. Okay, so you will understand as one subject verb combination, but this itself is again another subject verb combination. You notice Bucky was upset with Falcon. Okay, so there is a clause within a clause. Bucky is a subject, was upset with Falcon, was obviously is functioning like a verb here, state of the subject. So a sentence can have multiple subject verb combinations. You cannot afford to read them in one breath, especially when you're reading complicated subjects. The excerpts I've taken are a little complicated, so you'll understand the problem. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. Let's look at the next excerpt. So I picked a few paragraphs. In fact, there are 3 slides. In fact, you can actually pause the video, read this before I get to explaining it, just to see how good your comprehension is. Anyway, all of this is from this amazing book called Logic by Immanuel Kant. If there are any Kantian philosophers here, I'm proud to have you guys around. But if you want to read something non-fiction, this is an excellent book. Okay, pretty heavy, intense stuff. But otherwise, you don't need to actually forget. But still want to practice, it's not a bad idea. See, now look at this particular sentence. Logic means simply the art and method of correct thinking, right? Now, I will not explain the content. Okay, the content's not important for us. I want you to see the grammar bit here, how many ideas get attached. Now, if you notice, logic means this simply is just a useless filler word. These kind of filler words trouble the not so good readers, because you think the simply word adds to the complexity of the sentence but doesn't add to the meaning of the sentence. Really good readers just keep jumping over words like these, because simply won't add anything. Logic means the art and method of correct thinking. That's the idea. Simply should not distract you from seeing it. Okay, this is what is a simple sentence, one subject and one verb, right? The art and method is what you call a phrase, because it's not a complete idea. No subject verb combination is there. Logic means subject verb combination is there. So this is idea number 1, which you should be able to break. Make sure you do not get tripped over by unnecessary words like these. Okay, it is the logi. This is one part. Again, this is an idea, right? Or method of every science. Now again, this is what you call an extra. See, here's a phrase, right? It is a logi or method of every science, of every discipline and every art. Science, discipline, art, 3 different entities. Logic exists in all these 3. So a reader should understand that this is the idea. Okay, these are the extra piece of information. So it's a logy or method in where, so science and discipline of every discipline and every art, every science, every discipline, every art have equal status here. Okay, so you have to understand that they're all of equal status, because the important part is method or logic. So second sentence is an elaboration of the first sentence. Obviously, when you're reading, you need to know how to break this. So logic is the art and method of correct thinking. Correct thinking where in every science, every discipline, every art. That's the connection. So when you get moving forward from art, you are just remembering all these keywords. Remember that nouns are the keywords you always want to carry with you. So what is the subject about? What is the passage about? When you ask the question, the answer is always a noun. What are we talking about? Logic. What is logic? A method. Okay. Of what kind of method? Correct thinking. Correct thinking is also a noun phrase. Okay. Thinking is gerund form noun, right? Every science, every discipline, every art, and even music harbors it. This is a separate clause. Okay. This is what confuses the bad readers. Okay. This and here is obviously the conjunction, right? So you don't need to wait for this full stop. You can technically break the sentence here itself, because this is a new idea, right? Every science, every discipline, every art, that same method. Even music harbors logic is a separate idea. But the author was too lazy. Philosophers do that. They just go on, run on thoughts, so they write long sentences. Technically, they could have put a full stop here and then started with even music harbors it, but just put a semicolon and, right? So you need to, as a reader, do that. Put a full stop in your head, process this information, because by the time you come to this part, you will end up messing up this entire idea, which is why good reading is so important. Long sentences, difficult topics, you need to know when to break and process before you add more information. Otherwise, it's like choking on too much food in your mouth, right? It's a science. Okay, again, because it's a conjunction, so you need to learn to break it. So you always break at conjunctions mostly, because right side of conjunction, left side of conjunction, you get two generally separate ideas. So it's a science over simple idea. Break it there. Because why is it a science? To a considerable extent. See, now to a considerable extent does not give you the full idea. It's just a phrase. So to a considerable extent, still not giving you the idea. So you're generally waiting for the subject and the verb. To a considerable extent, the processes of correct thinking, I still don't have the verb. Okay, so from here to here, this entire thing is just one big noun phrase. To a considerable extent, this part is a noun phrase. The process of correct thinking is our subject. We still don't know the verb. To a considerable extent, modifier, the process of correct thinking. What about the process of correct thinking? The process of correct thinking can be reduced to what rules like physics and geometry. So this is again a verb. It's like simply saying I play cricket. I play cricket. Play is the verb. I is the subject. Cricket is the object. Right? Same logic. The process of correct thinking can be reduced to rules like physics and geometry. So every sentence, the sentence keeps getting more and more complicated, or the clause keeps getting more and more complicated. But the structure remains the same. More number of words. So subject can have just one word. It can be 10 words. It can be 20 words. And long noun phrase or group of noun phrases. But the structure of a sentence is still the same, right? Subject, then verb. Sometimes there is an object. Again, object is not always mandatory. I sleep, no object. I play cricket, cricket is the object. Basically, sometimes the verb needs extra information. Sometimes the verb does not need extra information, which is what brings us down to transitive and intransitive verbs. We don't want to go that complex for the first day. Anyways, so the process of correct thinking. So now if you notice, to a considerable extent is just filler again, useless information. You realize this the moment you come here. Okay, and this is what good readers do. By time they say to a considerable extent, the process of cutting, I'm like, okay, this is the subject, so that was useless information. So I don't need to worry about it. So letting it go in your cache, clearing your cache again, right? So it's a science. Why is it a science? Because the process of correct thinking can be reduced to rules. Okay, so thinking has rules. Logic is the method of correct thinking. So logic, thinking, rules apply in all science, music, art. Okay, just it has boiled down to such complicated ideas have boiled down to 5 or 6 words. That's it, right? And this is again comma and. Always treat comma and as a full stop. Okay, always treat comma and as a full stop. So you can just break it again. It can be taught to any normal mind. Separate idea. It is an art because, see, it is a science because this is the reason. Watch out for this kind of symmetry in complicated texts. It is a science because the process of correct thinking has rules. So what is the assumption there? Science is based on rules. Okay. It's an art because by practice it gives to thought that unconscious and immediate accuracy. So what is the assumption here? Art, when you practice art, you get accuracy. Can you see that is how critical reasoning also works? So the author jumping, so science because you can apply rules, meaning science is always associated with rules. It is art because by practicing you can become more accurate, meaning art involves practice and accuracy, right? Which guides the fingers of the pianist over his instrument to effortless harmonies. This part is useless. It's just elaboration, right? So you don't have to worry about this part. Okay, it's an art because by practice it gives to thought that unconscious and immediate accuracy. This is again, if I'm looking at just this standalone sentence here, this part, okay, we'll just look at this standalone sentence here. See how many parts are there. It's an art, separate idea, because we are going to get the reason. What is the reason? By practice, it gives to thought that unconscious and immediate accuracy. The structure is changed. It gives unconscious and immediate accuracy to thought. Should have been the actual sentence, but sometimes authors write in a twisted way. It gives to thought, okay? It's like saying I give money to the beggar. Instead of saying I give money to the beggar, you say I give to the beggar some money, right? Can you see the order has been changed, but the meaning is absolutely the same. But in complicated ideas like this, the change in order confuses you completely. So you have to be a little careful. It gives to thought. You have to ask a question, what does it give? Because whenever there is give involved, you will always have some agents. Who's giving? What is that person giving? What is a person, to whom is a person giving what? Okay, so it gives to thought that conscious and that unconscious and immediate accuracy. So a good reader, when that fellow reads this sentence, that fellow has to spot three different important things. Number one, it's an art because of this particular reason, that there is accuracy. There is an assumption that art involves practice, okay, that art involves practicing makes art more accurate, okay. And number three, there's a pattern which is very symmetrical to the way the author explained science. It's a science because there are rules. It's an art because the practice brings accuracy. Makes sense? And then there is this example which guides the fingers of the pianist over his instrument to effortless harmonies. This, along with the theory and idea sentence, has been connected just to make your life a little easier. So when you come down to guides the fingers, you can breathe a little easier because it's the same idea. The author is now elaborated. Nothing is so dull as logic, comma, and. Okay, so you can just break it here. Two different sentences. You don't have to read this in one breath. Nothing is so dull as logic. It's also very important. So it's dull, but it's important. Two different ideas that should not really bother you, to look at the continuation. There was a hint of this new science in Socrates' maddening insistence on definitions, comma, and. So you stop here, isn't it? There was a hint of this new science. Which is the new science? This is the other skill that good readers have and you need to develop. Whenever there is a pronoun, you should automatically know, your brain should automatically know which noun it is referring to. There was a hint of this new science. Which is the new science here? Logic is the new science. There's a hint of this new science in Socrates' maddening insistence on definitions. So again, an idea within an idea. It's almost like an inception of ideas. Socrates insisted that everything has definitions. In that, there was a hint of this new science. Logic took birth in the way Socrates insisted that there need to be definitions, meaning there should be rules, right? So somehow, the way Socrates wanted or insisted on definitions, so you have to understand what's the meaning of the word insistence. You have to understand that whole adjective called maddening. And then you have to understand that there is a hint to what is the definition of logic, right? Then comma and, so that's a separate sentence. There's a separate sentence. Don't want to read it in one breath. Again, in Plato's constant redefining of every concept. In Socrates' insistence on definitions, in Plato's constant redefining of every concept. In both cases, you can see logic. So Socrates followed some logic. Plato also followed logic. So you can see how logic worked and what Socrates did and what Plato did, okay? Aristotle's little treatise on definition shows how his logic found nourishment at the source. So we have Socrates, we have Plato, and we have Aristotle. Generally, I remember it as Pa, okay, to remember the chronological order. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Anyway, you're not philosophy students, you don't have to worry that much. If you wish to converse with me, said Voltaire, define your terms. This sentence is not giving you any new information. It just agrees with this old information again. So you should know when sentences are not useful, they're just adding more content, right? Makes your life a little easier. How many a debate would have been? See, now some people would be confused. There is many, then it should be debates. Why should it be debate? There's an A added, okay? Many a student. It will not be many a students. Many a student has failed at the last hurdle. Many students have failed at the last hurdle. Meaning is the same. Emphasis is different. Many a student emphasizes how many have failed. Many students have failed at the last hurdle. No emphasis. I'm just saying, giving you an absolute information. So even in the subtle nuances, the tone of a particular text keeps changing. Okay, how many a debate would have been deflated into a paragraph if the disputants had dared to define their terms? This is to tell you, it's a very complicated sentence, but if you understood the previous context, you know what we are reading here is the author giving importance to logic. And it's a complex sentence, like the example I gave you earlier. If the disputants had dared to define their terms, many debates would have been deflated into a paragraph. Long debates would have been reduced to a paragraph if people gave definitions. People don't give definitions, then things become long. So logic makes things concise, is the inference that you can draw from this sentence. So a good question setter could ask that question. What is the inference that I can draw from this particular sentence? Which is that the author feels, or the author is implying, that when definitions are given, which has been connected to logic from the first sentence of the paragraph. So definition has not directly been connected to logic in this sentence. This sentence we only have debate and definitions. In the previous sentence we have definitions and logic. Therefore, the inference will be logic and debates. That's how critical reasoning works. That's why it's so complicated. Because when the question is asked, many people just look at this sentence and then they'll try to pick an answer which only has the words debate and paragraph and disputants and definitions. They'll never think of the part that there is something called logic here. But the actual answer will be this science is logic. Logic is the one that would have existed if people defined or dare to define their terms, or if there are very strong rules. Therefore, debates would have been resolved very easily. How many a debate would have been deflated into a paragraph is reduced to a paragraph. It's a very complicated sentence. Also notice, in a complex sentence, I can change the order of the clauses. Right. If the disputants had dared to define their terms, many a debate would have been deflated into a paragraph. Is the same thing as how many a debate would have been deflated into a paragraph the disputants had dared to define. So clause order can be changed, which makes things even more difficult. This is why you always read clause by clause. The sentence is not important, right? You could also ask, why did the author say how many a debate? Emphasis, always imagine an exclamation mark in your head, because this is a drama. It's called rhetoric, right? And the author is trying to attract your attention to the magnanimity of how much trouble could have been saved by logic. Okay, that this is the alpha and omega of logic, the heart and soul of it. That every important term in serious discourse shall be subjected to strictest scrutiny and definition. See, a good reader, for that fellow, this sentence does not matter at all, because that fellow understood from this pronouns that logic exists in definitions. This entire sentence is the alpha and omega of logic, the heart and soul of logic, that every important term must be subjected to strictest scrutiny and definition, something that's already understood, almost like the summary of the case. So this should not be new information for you. This feels like new information for you, that means you did not connect. So the reading is the art of connecting one sentence to the next. Otherwise, it's a bunch of sentences, right? You're putting the sentences together, you create another meaning entirely. It's like watching a movie. A movie is not just a montage of videos or a montage of pictures, right? It's when you put one scene and another scene together, you have character establishment, you have the villain, you have theme, okay? The whole thing goes together. So then, therefore, we have season 1 and season finales and new revelations and plot twists and whatnot, right? So when you're reading, you read it in the same way, the way you watch a movie, that you're also anticipating what's going to come next. Same as reading, same as watching, same in watching, not very different. So then sentences, long sentences like this won't be surprising, because yeah, I already understand. That's what the author is trying to say, that the heart and soul of logic is in how we can apply rules and define and redefine concepts. That Socrates and Plato did, right? It is difficult, and so this you can break it here. It is difficult, easy to remember, just keep it aside. Ruthlessly test the mind, second idea, but is also a conjunction. Third idea, once done, it is half of any task. So what is the conclusion? What is the author implying, or what can I infer from the paragraph? The author is saying, define your logic first. Then your debates become easier, your life becomes, I wish people followed it, right? And we won't have so many social media debates with people talking a lot of crap. But anyway, that's why it's so important. Stuff like this, you should be reading critical reasoning, philosophy, grammar. Combination of all these makes you a smarter reader. Smarter readers generally talk less, isn't it? Unless they are teachers. So I hope it makes sense. I mean, the content itself is difficult. You can read it again. I have paused the video in the beginning. But what I'm trying to show you here is the importance of observing that your reading comprehension is a combination of paragraphs. Paragraphs are a combination of sentences, but that's nothing if you can't break a sentence into clauses and phrases, and how the clauses interact with each other with the help of conjunctions. For example, and is not the same as but, isn't it? It is difficult and ruthlessly test the mind. Okay, so negative, but once it is done, it's half of any task, positive. So when the conjunction that is added will also convey information. Okay, it is raining and I will go out, not the same as it is raining but I will go out. In one case, it's expected for me to go out when it is raining. In another case, it's not expected for me to go out when it's raining. So that there's subtle information always getting conveyed. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. If it did, please share the video. Other CAT aspirants or whoever might need it. If there is traction, if they have specific questions, I'll probably make more videos. Okay, until next time, peace out.